The Sweet Sound of Success show is brought to you by the Mentor Studio. The Mentor Studio is an exclusive mentoring and training program for social influencers, business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, and startups, bringing personal development to the underserved around the world. And brought to you by Success Strategists. Simple strategies that work to develop your business with flow and ease using proven strategies and the right tactics. This is the Sweet Sound of Success with Sue Wilhite, Success Attraction Expert. Emmanuelle Chasse understands the effects of childhood trauma. She left home at the age of 15 in order to escape the vicious cycle of abuse from her alcoholic mother and narcissistic father. Having always felt different growing up, she spent most of her early adult life questioning the meaning of it all, including her purpose. In 2011, Emmanuelle's right eye had to be removed due to glaucoma. In the midst of that crisis, her husband began being unfaithful. Her old beliefs kept her in that marriage for another 8 years before one day waking up to a complete identity crisis. Feeling alone, scared, crippled with self-limiting beliefs, she felt she had two choices. She could wake up or quit living. Fortunately for us, she chose life, and that decision has led her down a path of healing her body, mind, and spirit. Her life's purpose is to bring more consciousness to the art of living and parenting and help spread awareness that in order to do better, we must know better. Welcome, Emmanuelle Chasse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Oh, this is going to be a fabulous interview. The hero's journey was meant for you.
Thank you. I love it.
So for those of you who are watching or listening who have no clue what I'm talking about with the hero's journey, this was a format or a structure that the great mythologist Joseph Campbell put together out of his reading of hundreds of thousands of myths and legends and stories. And it actually has 16 pieces in it. We're not doing 16. Just so you know, take a deep breath. We're only doing 5. Because this is the hero's journey for the entrepreneur's soul. And while all 16 are probably relevant, I like to pick out the ones that are particularly useful for the entrepreneur. And those 5 pieces that we're going to grill Emmanuelle on are the ordinary beginning, which no entrepreneur has an ordinary beginning, just so you know. The call to action, which we heard a tiny amount in her bio, but I'm going to hope to get more. The big hairy monsters, which I have discovered over the process of doing more than 50 episodes of this. The big hairy monsters and the call to action for most entrepreneurs tend to be pretty wrapped up with each other. So we'll kind of dance between those two. And then 2 pieces that I think are the biggies for every entrepreneur. One has to do with what Joseph Campbell called the guides, the mentors, the allies, the wind beneath your wings, the folks who support you, who guide you, who kept you going, who got you through, because entrepreneurs really can't do it by themselves. And there's got to be somebody there who can hold the hand and let you know what might be going forward or what direction might be a good one to do. And finally, the journey home, which is all about having had the call to action, having played with those big hairy monsters, and having had allies. Maybe there's some folks in your life who are like, what are you doing and why are you doing this? And how do you spell entrepreneur? And why would you do this? Why would you leave the safety and security of a paycheck for this wild life. What's going on with that? And how do you deal with that as an entrepreneur? So I love going through that. So, Emmanuelle, Chasse, what was your ordinary beginning?
My ordinary beginning. Well, you did speak a little bit about it in my bio. But I at the age of 3 months old, my parents, my mom and dad kind of went, we're too young, we don't know what to do with this, and dropped me off on my grandmother's doorstep. Now, keep in mind, she'd just finished raising 5 boys on her own. She was a single mother. Her youngest, my uncle, was 14 at the time, so she was still raising him. He was still at home. And her husband had left when he was, just a few years old. The baby was just a few years old, having never worked outside of the home really, because, she was a stay-at-home mom, very traditional back in the day, taking care of the household. She was the domestic manager, we'll say. And now, my grandfather left, and here in Canada, back in the days, in the 70s, when you would leave the province or the state, you didn't have to pay for child support. So my grandmother woke up one morning, my grandfather had left her with the 5 kids and left with her sister-in-law, my grandmother's brother's wife. And so her entire world crumbled, and she had to feed the kids. And so she started working outside of the house, and she was by the time that I got to her doorstep, she was tired, but incredibly grateful that I was a girl. She wanted, she tried her whole life, to have a girl, and that wasn't in the cards for her. And so the magical essence that, it's a girl kind of made the fact that I was a brand new baby seem less painful. And also she believed it was temporary. She was giving my parents, a shot to get their act together. And that wasn't the case at all. And so she raised me for a good chunk of my life until the age of 12. When I was 12, she wanted to have a break for the summer. And she called up my dad and said, can you just watch her for a couple of months? I'd like to take a road trip with the ladies, and we'd like to go to Lake Louise and Banff. And he completely lost his stuff. And 36 hours later, he drove 36 hours straight and came and got me and put all my stuff in garbage bags. And he was just, so angry with her that she needed a break, and he didn't take it very well.
Oh my God.
And so that's when he entered my life, and decided that he was going to become a parent now. And he was unqualified from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so, his anger and lack of understanding of the situation caused so much pain to my grandmother as well, and she was what I knew to be my mom. She was my primary, caregiver. And so he decided that he would become a parent, and he didn't know the first thing about being a parent. The Bryan Adams song, is it 18 Till I Die? I believe that's the title of the song. Right. Well, that's him. He's never grown up. He's never held down a job. He's just, and so now he's got this kid that he has to take care of. He's a hot mess. And, he's got so much unhealed trauma from his own past that I know now, and unleashed all of that onto me. And he was, very much an alcoholic and an abuser. He was a narcissist. And so, that I went from, not to say that my grandmother was, perfect by any means. She struggled with her own mental health issues, but I was accustomed to those cycles of her ups and downs and emotional roller coaster, whereas my father was just aggressive and angry all the time. And so, being such a sensitive kid, that really affected me. And so, he would take his anger out through physical abuse, through name calling and all of that. And I realized very early on, when I was very, very little, that when my dad would blow into town, and, he's the kind of guy that shows up 4 days after Christmas to wish everyone Merry Christmas because he's so busy. Or he'll call you 2 weeks after your birthday and say, oh my gosh, you'll never know what happened to me. Had a motorcycle accident on your birthday, couldn't call. And so I knew from a very young age that didn't feel right, that wasn't right. And so I also knew that his character and the way he treated people wasn't in alignment with the essence of me. But now living with him and having to live through being treated that way by someone that you don't have that much respect for. You have this people pleasing, you want your dad to love you and you want to be daddy's little princess. That's always there.
Right.
And I feel like that was overshadowing what I did know about him. But when I got there and got to live with him in his energy every day, it became very much, how do I survive? And so that's why at the age of 15, I knew in that moment that if I didn't leave, and I was very methodical, I got a job and saved my money and, forged my name on a lease and said I was 18. And lucky for me, that woman is an angel. And I she's still alive. I send her so much love and light every day, but she knew that I knew that she knew,
Yes.
and it was kind of like, okay. But I was very mature and I presented myself well. And I made a case for myself. It was a tiny apartment, but I signed the lease and I was going to school and I would go to work and I would go to Walmart every paycheck and buy like a few rolls of toilet paper or a broom or a mop and all the essentials, because my grandmother had trained me very well that your home needed to be clean, and would bring them to that apartment. But I knew that if I stayed one more week, that the little bit of light that I had left in me would be completely snuffed and I would become a statistic. And that was very evident to me in that moment. So that was my ordinary beginning at the age of 15, just knowing in that moment, okay, this is the path you're choosing and you're conscious that it's not going to be easy, but you're going to live wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing journey. Yeet.
Very ordinary.
Yeah.
I love it.
So what brought you to being an entrepreneur after all of this trauma and upheaval? And, it would seem to me that someone who went through trauma and upheaval and uncertainty and not knowing how things are going to go would want to cling to safety, security, predictability, however illusory they are, that's the way that it's presented in the world. And you would think that somebody like that would be like, nope, I'm keeping a job. I'm doing a job. I am not going out and being independent.
That's such a great question. And, there's many factors, but the first one I don't know if it's hereditary, if the entrepreneurial spirit is hereditary or not, but my grandfather, and I've now come to understand and forgive myself and him, because for many years while he was alive, he was a great man to me and nothing but I also always kind of sided with my grandmother. But he was an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
He was an entrepreneur. He was a carpenter, and he always, he did really well at that. And as I mentioned, my grandmother had, 5 sons, and one of them was my father. My father always worked for himself. He was an entrepreneur. He took after his father when he worked. But my grandmother's firstborn son, my uncle Gildo, he was an entrepreneur. And when I was little, when my dad stepped away from his duties as a parent, and my grandmother's now, older in life and the ability to work, and she's getting up there, he always supported me financially. I didn't know till I was a little bit older, but he always helped my grandmother and made sure that we had everything we needed while I was under her care. And he was always an entrepreneur. And his wife, his now wife, they've been together for forever. Both of them together started a business, and their passion, their conviction, that just the essence of entrepreneurship. He was beautiful, and he still is. I don't know why he's beautiful, and he's kind and wear that suit and charming and, very, you know what I mean? Like the business guy. And my aunt, beautiful and an empath and helping people through their business. And what interested me the most. So
you had a model.
I had great role models.
Yeah. Okay.
But the best part, what had me curious from a very young age, was that they were living life on their terms.
Right.
And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship.
Right.
You work really, really hard, more hours theoretically than most. When you're doing what you love, it seemed perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a great reason. And yes, I sometimes think that entrepreneurship is hereditary. Sometimes it just breaks out of nowhere. But I've interviewed several entrepreneurs who are the children of entrepreneurs, or in a family of entrepreneurs. So yeah, it does seem that sort of independent, I can do it, I have something to offer gene is there.
Something that's greater than the example that I had on the other side, because even though my father was an entrepreneur, it was, I work to live for today.
Mm.
But going back into anyone who's listening, because it's very important, a part of that was I had great role models, which encouraged me to go down that path. But in identifying the childhood trauma, as I was going, through it, I couldn't necessarily put words to it, but I never felt like I belonged anywhere.
Mm.
I bounced around a lot from home to home and moved around a lot. And I always knew and was very aware of what was going on in my life and what was happening from a very young age. And I didn't want anyone else to know that. And so I never allowed for real connection, real human connection, even being in school in the second, third, fourth grade. It was like, I'm going in, I'm doing my time, I'm going to be friendly to everyone, but I don't want a best friend, because that best friend is going to know that my family's not perfect.
Right.
And so
that whole shame thing.
Exactly. And so having a job where you get close to your coworkers and people get to know you, that was like red flag, mayday, you don't want to do that. No, you don't want to do that.
Right.
It's going to be too much energy to put up the wall,
Yeah. Wow. So you had folks who were role models, and you had some significant trauma in your life. Who were folks who really took you by the hand and said, well, to avoid problems in the future, here's what you do? Or, even cheerleaders, I know you can do this kind of thing. What kind of guides and mentors and coaches did you have?
Well, I would say that my uncle Gildo did try to coach me. And in all fairness, if you're listening, thank you. But I didn't want anyone telling me what to do. And he'll bring that up casually, like, and he'll say, like, I've got years of experience and reference letters, and I've helped people change their lives, and you've got access to me. And, and it's like, yeah, but no. And I know, and you're amazing, but you made it on your own. And that's having the chip on the shoulder,
right?
Part of the unhealed trauma as well. Whereas in this season of my life now, my aunt and I have become much closer over the last, 2-3 years. And so her advice it doesn't come off as advice or coaching, and more of wisdom. Mm. She's learned how to, because I have ADHD and ODD. For anyone who doesn't know, ODD is oppositional defiance disorder. And so when you try to tell me what to do, I'm like, I'm going to figure out a better way. Right? Nobody's going to tell me what to do. And she's learned that she'll say things like, do you know what I heard? Or have you ever thought, did you read this article? And she, her opinion is so valuable to me, and I respect her so much. And in this season of my life, I'm more mature. And so she knows that that's how she baits me into, okay, I'm listening, bless my uncle's soul. He did try for many years. And he said, I could save you so much suffering. I was like, I'm not suffering. This is the grit that it takes, and that's the ego as well. But yeah, I'm sure if he wrote a memoir, it would be, 16 chapters on how to try to get Emmanuelle to stay grounded and learn from example.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I've never done that before. No,
that doesn't sound familiar.
No, I've never, rejected advice, and, Yeah, gone my own way. No, 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 not part of my thing at all. So,
Like every turn. My ex-husband is the same thing. And so we're talking about support systems. And so very, very early on, it wasn't, he made mistakes and I made mistakes and all of that. And the infidelity is one thing, but he was very much, I would say in my life, he was my biggest cheerleader.
mhm.
There hasn't been one, like him since. And there wasn't anyone that was as big of a cheerleader up until that point either. And I think that's why, the devastation is so real, because I put him on a pedestal and he put me on a pedestal. And when you do that, you set expectations. We were very young when we met, but he was a fantastic cheerleader. And he's the one who, after the kids had gone back to school, I was a stay-at-home mom with them for the first 5 years of their lives. And I'd really started to bake a lot from home, because my grandmother was a fantastic cook,
Uh-huh.
but she was not a great baker. And
Uh-huh.
I was little and I wanted to help in the kitchen. She was always too tired. She's, I've been there and I've done that. And now I don't want to make a mess and I don't want to clean flour from the ceiling. And so you can watch. And she knew how to make one thing really well, which is an old fashioned pudding. You throw fruit in a bowl with milk and sugar, and she wanted to do it. And so this rebellious side of me was like, I'm going to learn how to bake. And again, I never followed a recipe. So my ex-husband would come home, and for one Christmas, he bought me a KitchenAid mixer and a cookbook, and I started making him desserts every day. But when I would follow the recipe, I wouldn't follow all of the directions. And it would be like, bake at 325 or 350 for an hour. And I'd be like, oh, he's coming home in 20 minutes. We're going to put that puppy on 500 for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and we're going to get great brownies. Oh, bless his heart. And he ate it. He would eat it. And he would say, oh, babe, that's wonderful. 6 months later, 50 pounds gained. And he looked at me and he was like, you're getting, you're doing really well, but just, take your time. You seem to be developing a passion for this. And I was like, I am. And he says, then put your heart into it. You don't got to rush through it. And, years later, when the kids started going to school, he says, Emma, you've got a knack for this. And by then I'd started following the directions. And, and that's when he said, you seem so, I'd started working. And he says, when you talk about your job, you just look like you're flatlining. And when you talk about baking, when you talk about cooking, you light up and your energy is different. Why don't you, start selling it from home? And so he really encouraged that entrepreneurial spirit. And he could tell that that's when I was in my element.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And he was tired of eating burnt brownies.
Somebody else needs to eat these.
Someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about, your husband was delightfully subtle in getting you to go out in the world. He obviously knew you. So what else was there in your family, friends, that they just didn't get it about you being an entrepreneur? And baking obviously wasn't where you stopped, right? You did other things besides put brownies out in the world and increase the chocolate consumption of Canada.
Yeah, very much. But the entrepreneurial spirit was always there. I'm very solutions oriented. And that comes again from childhood trauma of not ever wanting anyone to pity me. So it's like, I don't want anyone to pity me. So when people come to me with a problem, it's like, don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with what you think would work as a solution. And so that's how I lived my life. And I didn't have my driver's license. We didn't have a second car. He was working full time at the time, doing overtime to pay for everything in our little our little family, keep us afloat. And I just had my second son, and I told him, I'm lonely. The kids are lonely. I was a very young mom. And so the older moms would always kind of like keep an eye on me at the park, like, ooh, she's one of those, I didn't have anything external I was very lovely, but I looked very young and I was young. And so one day I hear something in the local news saying, there's a shortage of daycares. And I was like, next week we're opening a home daycare. What are the laws? And so I went and I registered and I started a play because I'm all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Either nothing, or I'm going to start a daycare 5 days a week. Oh, everyone's doing it from 8 to 4. We're going to go 6 to 6. Then we're going to have a drop-off play group on the weekends. And so he was like, oh, okay. And this was my way of bringing the kids into the house. And so they would have interactions, and I loved it. And I did it for a couple of years, and, the money was great. And then I got bored, and that's very much the essence of me and part of the ADD, but it's kind of like, I've been there, I've done that. And I knew it wasn't going to be me forever. But there was a problem and I found a solution. And then from that, I started working in MLM, which again, I loved. I believed in the company that I was working with at the time. And I built a very successful team in a short amount of time. And then it was like, okay, well, I don't want to do this forever. This is great. This is good. What can we do next? So the entrepreneurial spirit had been present there. But the baking, I think, made me feel closer to my grandma. And that's the energy that he would see was different than the other businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was there anybody in your surroundings who was like, what are you doing and why are you doing this? And
oh, yeah.
Or did they know better than to get in your way?
Well, I think they knew better, but they tried. Everyone questioned everything all the time. And I think that's what gave me even more desire to do it, was the one that hurt the most, but was the most common was, you're going to need to settle down. You need to grow up. You're a mom now. You're a wife now. You need to grow up. You need to settle down. You need a retirement savings plan. You're not going to get a pension if you don't start contributing. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of work. And then the kicker was, once my eye was removed, was you should just apply for a disability pension. Why do you keep making life so hard for yourself? Apply for a disability pension, raise your kids. Don't you have enough on your plate? And that created a lot of resentment for a long time in my heart, and saying, why does everybody want, we have an expression in French, I'm not sure how to translate, but why does everyone want me to go towards the bottom? It's kind of like pulling me down instead. And I couldn't figure it out. Shouldn't we be saying, well, it's amazing that you're trying. Whatever comes of it, comes of it. There's other options for you, but you go getter you. But it wasn't.
Right.
And Kevin was really the only one who was like, you're unstoppable, you're going to do it. And it is what it is. And so what? You only have one eye, or so what? This is not, that's not, this is you. Just follow your bliss. But that was the most frustrating. And so I stopped telling people what my plans were.
Right.
And then you shut down because you don't want to hear it. People would ask, how are you doing? Things are great. Or for a long time, things are okay. I'm starting more now to say things are great, but things are okay. Just figuring it out. What are you doing now? Just figuring things out. Yeah.
So I understand that you have a gift for our viewers and listeners to possibly help them figure it out.
Talk about such a beautiful segue. You're a true professional. Absolutely. My partner Kelly and I, we've just finished writing an ebook that are 10 ways to identify how your unhealed childhood trauma could be keeping you overweight, how childhood trauma and obesity are linked. And so you'll have the link and your viewers can download that for free.
It'll be there. Yeah, so we'll have the link to that in the here in the end notes and in the show notes. And that is absolutely a brilliant thing to do, because yes, trauma, obesity, gosh.
And that was my best friend. Food was my best friend my entire life. And so I've always struggled with chronic weight issues. And, when you learn that was a layer of protection, that's what was subconsciously keeping me safe. Now I just want to tell everyone about it, just say, free yourself from the weight, heal from the inside out. And
right.
You don't have to stay unhealthy. You just got to face the issue right in the eyes.
Before we get people, blasting and the haters coming on. This is not to body shame anyone. And if there is, if you've got a doctor telling you might want to do something about your weight or your diet, then this would be a good thing to explore to help you get through it. If you're perfectly happy with your weight, if you're perfectly happy with who you are and what your body is, bless you, that's awesome, go for it. And if you've struggled with it and you need some help, don't have, what did you call it, Emma, the oppositional something disorder?
Yeah. No, the oppositional defiance disorder. This is very much women who feel like I felt for most of my life, which was I felt stuck in a fat suit. Yes. And I was intelligent, ambitious, and successful in other areas of my life. But when it came to weight loss, for my own personal comfort, to feel good in my body, not for any other reason, I couldn't hold myself accountable. Right. I kept self-sabotaging. And so that's who this book is written for, is if you feel like an imposter in your body and you're at a point in life where you just don't have the energy to do the things that you want to do. And it's not a diet. It's not a weight loss program. It's to help you identify that, there are 10 key childhood trauma factors, symptoms, whatever you want to call them, that create limiting beliefs in our adult life.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much, Emma, for being on the show and sharing your story. That was phenomenal and so inspiring that you took the maybe not so great ingredients of your life and baked them into something really phenomenal, really, really helpful for the world and coming up with solutions to help other people, to pass it forward, so other people don't have to suffer with the same sorts of emotional trauma that you did. Thank you so much.
I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you to the listeners and viewers of The Sweet Sound of Success. What are your dreams for your business? You know what drives me crazy? Really smart business owners denying their talents because they've been taught it has to be hard, because they've been taught that they don't deserve their gifts, that they're not worth anything. They've been taught that their gender means they can't express their genius. I'm Sue Wilhite, and I want you to have access to your genius. I want you to go out and rock the world with your genius. So I created the Call to Action coaching program. It's all about getting to the heart of you and what you've got to share with the world to make a profitable business that thrives and allows you to make a difference in the world. Click the link to sign up for the Call to Action coaching program today. Don't let your genius go unnoticed.